This episode of the Vincast is proudly supported by Sheba, Australia's first and only active all-female rideshare service getting women and children where they need to go. You can use Sheba in Melbourne, Geelong, Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, and it will be available in Perth, Darwin and Adelaide soon. On episode 126 of the Vincast, I chat with Marie Doyard, owner of cult grower champagne house, Jacquart. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Gaspbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. I'm super excited to have yet another episode for you, but I'm also excited to share with you an exciting development here in Melbourne on the 5th of December at Noisy Ritual on Logan Street, Brunswick East, in conjunction with the podcast network that I'm now a part of, Earbuds. We are going to be hosting the first ever edition of Vincast Live. So along with my co-hosts for the live show, Nev Spirovska, she is the host of Quickie Podcast. I'm going to be welcoming two guests, Ben Rankin, the chief winemaker at Galley Estate, and former podcast guest Dan Buckle, chief winemaker for Shandon, Australia. And we are going to be chatting about what the right grape varieties are for Australian wine. So please check out the links below to find out how to secure some tickets for the live taping. If you can't make it to the show, even though I do highly recommend getting there because there's going to be some wine tasting as well. If you can't get there in person, please do find out the information about how you can watch live and ask questions and interact. But I'm really excited. It's going to be awesome. Stand by for future more information. But it's going to be fantastic. So for this episode, I am really excited to have sat down with Marie Doyard, who is the owner of grower champagne producer Jacquart. And I thought it would be perfect for Spring Racing Carnival, but also for heading into Christmas, New Year's, summer to talk about champagne. So Marie was here recently and had a great chat about her background and the story of Jacquart. So I hope you do enjoy this episode. Stick around to the end to find out how you get in contact with both of us. But until then, I'll see you on the other side. Marie, thank you for making some time whilst you're here in Australia, showing your beautiful champagnes. And I'd like to welcome you on the podcast. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation.
Marie, I start each of my episodes by asking my guests if wine was something that was important to them when they were young. Like, what's the earliest memories you have about wine that made you think about it in a different way?
The thing is, I've been always growing up with my parents, following my parents' job. It means making wine, producing wine. So I've been living exactly the same life. I was following them in their up and down, I would say, the everyday work when you have to run a family business.
Sure. So you grew up in Champagne?
Absolutely.
You're born there?
Yes, I'm born in Reims.
Yes.
Because that's the biggest city where I'm coming from, the Côte des Blancs, really close from Épernay.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm born in Reims, and I've done my studies in Reims as well.
Okay, so I have a quick question because there's so many different ways that people pronounce the name of the city. What's the true correct French way to say it?
In French, it's Reims.
Reims.
Yes.
Okay. Reims.
I know it's quite hard to say.
Yes.
I mean, for foreign people, the R, Reims, which is quite...
and the M is almost silent.
Yeah, it is.
Because Reims is one of my favorite cities to visit in France. Of course, there's a beautiful cathedral.
Yeah.
It's very, very tall, and there's always work going on because it's very old. But Reims is a beautiful, beautiful
It is
place
indeed.
to be.
Yeah.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your family's history in
Yep.
Champagne, and whether it's to do with wine or anything else with wine?
Always.
Yes,
Through Champagne.
always.
From my both side, actually, from my mom and from my dad's side. So my dad used to work with his parents and brother in Vertu, which is a Premier Cru appellation village classified in Champagne. And my mom, she's coming from Ménil-sur-Roger, which is a Grand Cru village appellation Champagne.
And those are both in the Côte Blanc?
Absolutely. They are just 5 kilometers difference. And so they used to work separately with their own business coming from the older generation, coming from both sides. Obviously, you heard about the CIVC,
Yes,
which is the Comité Interprofessionnel des Vins de Champagne.
yes.
That's the big community who is deciding, protecting the brand of Champagne, protecting the name
Very important.
Champagne. Oh, yes.
And very, very powerful. Like
Yeah,
they were the ones who were
Yeah.
saying, protect Champagne. No one else in the world can call it Champagne. It must only be from this geographic region, correct?
Absolutely. They are doing an amazing job. And guess who have been created? There's absolutely 2 people have been created the CIVC just after the war. My great-grandfather,
Yes.
Maurice Doyard, from my dad's side. Okay?
Okay.
So we are involved in a champagne business and as grower champagne a long time ago. So I've got definitely that in my blood. And
Yes.
that's my roots.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when did your family first start with wine?
90s, 30, roughly.
Okay.
So it's like about 4 generations ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
This was obviously a very difficult time for Champagne. Late 19th century, there
Yeah.
was phylloxera,
Absolutely.
then was World War One,
Yeah.
and about this time was the Depression, and then of course
Absolutely.
World War Two. There was a long period of time that Champagne was struggling, and of course there was the front, and so there was soldiers coming through, and
Absolutely.
and a lot of destruction of vineyards and of
Yeah.
wineries.
We've been through quite hard moments, but after the war, everything getting more and more nicer, if I can say. And it was the real beginning of the renaissance of the champagne. Yeah.
So the formation of the CIVC was very important because even in they'd already had many years of struggle, and there was going to be even more struggle in the future.
Yeah.
So this was something that was very much building for the future.
Absolutely. And if I'm not wrong, it was the first CIVC was created from Champagne. And my great-grandfather was really an updated guy, if I can say,
Yes.
because he was a completely new vision. And after the Champagne CIVC was created, you had Bordeaux and all the French region had his own committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is sort of before appellation.
Yeah.
There was some classifications in Bordeaux and in Burgundy as well about this is the quality parts of the region as far as Premier Cru, Grand Cru, this kind of thing. But as far as a region working together to
Yes.
protect
Yeah.
their interests
Yeah.
and to help each other grow, the CIVC was sort of the first one in France.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And which is really important, that Champagne, it's only one appellation
Yes.
working in the same way,
Yes.
which is sometimes completely different. I'm thinking about Bordeaux, it's like 53, 54 different appellation.
Yes.
It's completely different area for sure, different history. But honestly, I can see that that's the key word, Champagne.
Yes.
And it means everything for everybody. Everybody will know what champagne means,
Yes.
which is really strong. That's a really strong things to say. Yeah.
Already at this point, Champagne, there was sort of a brand there were very large maisons who had
Yeah,
done a lot of work, not
absolutely.
only selling champagne wine in France, but also,
Oh, yes,
in Russia and the
absolutely.
United Kingdom, and then in the United States as well. So for the champagne producers in the past to have seen the success, I guess it was important to say we can be very strong.
Absolutely.
Champagne as a brand
Yeah,
can be something very important in the future. So
yeah,
we make this work now, and we have this vision,
yeah,
like your great grandfather had. Then there will be a time in the future, I'm sure,
absolutely.
when champagne will be one of the most powerful
Yeah.
wine brands in the world.
It's working quite well in Champagne because big brands are doing an amazing job in terms of communication, spending, marketing, and things, lots of money on marketing, communicating around the world
Yes.
for only one reason. And we do supply the full world, which is quite an amazing idea
Yes.
coming from this little region. And it's true that big brands have done an amazing, and they are still doing an amazing job of communication. And for grower champagne like us, they are opening the door.
Of
They've been
course.
opening the door for us. That's what
You
big
don't.
brands are
There's nowhere
smaller.
you have to go to explain what champagne is.
Yes,
People know
it's already,
champagne. It's sparkling.
yeah,
It's Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier. The work has been done, but it's just a question of talking and teaching about what grower champagne is and why
absolutely.
this is special.
Absolutely. We are not working the same way. They are working on volume to satisfy a maximum of pallets and people around the world.
Yes.
We are more working on family business. There's somebody behind the bottle. It's a long-term investment since few generations, coming from a soil, a terroir. So we are more focusing on smaller. It's a completely different approach, obviously,
of course.
but there's space for everybody.
Yes.
And I have to say that grower champagne is getting more and more important
Yes.
in the champagne around the world.
Yes.
And yes, but the grower need the smaller, and the smaller need the bigger at the same time.
Of course. I think, I feel like, and there is something similar happening in Australia as far as large and small producers. The large producers, maybe they're not changing so much. They have the same sort of story all the time.
Yeah,
And the media and sommelier and the consumers want something new sometimes. They
absolutely.
need to talk about something different. And so the small producers who are able to do things a little bit differently and have something different to say,
Absolutely.
they are creating interest. So the large maison, they probably, even though they might go, oh, they're getting the attention,
Yeah,
at least people are talking about champagne.
absolutely.
Now there are so many more sparkling wine made around the world, Australia, of course,
Yeah,
but even in Europe, Prosecco is very strong.
absolutely.
So as long as people are talking about champagne, then that's positive.
For the image, absolutely. This is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who was in both your parents' families? Who was the first to establish their own winery, and where were the vineyards?
My dad.
Okay.
My dad in Vertu.
Yep.
Then my mum through his own parents as well.
Okay.
So they're roughly starting almost at the same time. But it's true that from my dad's side, coming from Maurice Doyard with the CIVC, the impact was a little bit more important.
Sure.
So, but they roughly both working as champagne grower together
Okay.
from both sides. Because before they used to have grapes, but they used to sell to negotiant people,
Sure.
but not make their own vinification and the full process.
And was this something that was a bit unusual at the time? Was to grow and make your own champagne?
No, it was this time of, if I can almost say that grower champagne are starting to make their own champagne.
Okay.
So there was like a little bit of influence coming from the grower champagne, the terroir to focus on. Yeah.
Okay. And so were the vineyards that both of your parents' families had, were they centered around Vertou and
Menil.
Meunier-sur-Oger?
Yeah, yeah,
So just in those areas?
absolutely.
So predominantly would be Chardonnay?
Oh, yes, 89%.
Okay. And so then with your parents, is it came together? Like they became part of the same kind of...
When I've decided
Okay.
to look after the family business to carry on in 2004,
Yes.
so it's like almost 13 years old ago.
Okay.
They used to work completely separately, but they decided to offer me a chance by joining the two properties.
Okay.
And I have cousin from my dad's side, and I don't have cousin from my mother's side. So it was easier for my dad to take his own vineyards to my mom's family.
Okay.
That's why I kept the André Jacquart brand, which is the name of my grandfather coming from my mother's side.
Okay.
And that's why as well we do own 24 hectares, which is quite big, if I can say, for grower champagne.
And it's still in the same areas?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have a little bit of vineyards as well in Aube and Aisne, but the largest percentage of our vineyards are located in Mélisle, Grand Cru, then as well in Vertou, Premier Cru.
Okay. So growing up, this was for you a time when Champagne was starting to grow again. How did you get involved with the business?
Nothing
when
was
you were young?
planned.
Okay.
Nothing was planned at all, to be honest. I've done my commercial studies. I've been traveling a lot. It's true, I have to say, I've been always working in the wine business. So maybe it was definitely my blood from the beginning, but it was not for my own property. So nothing was planned. I have a bigger brother and a little sister. We never received any pressure from our parents asking us, okay, kids, we have some vineyards, you have to come back. Never, never, never. So in 2003, my parents asked the three of us if maybe one of us was interested in coming back in a family business. Because I'm sure you can understand that having 24 hectares to transmit to your children, if they are coming back or not, you are not taking the same decision, obviously. So my parents was only 50 when they decided to ask us if we were interested or not to coming back. And it's true that it took 1 year to my brother and my little sister to make sure about our decision, because it's one of these decisions you take for the rest of your life.
Of course.
So it's a family investment.
And you have to think about your children and your brother and sister's children, and
Absolutely.
and if they want to be involved with the business.
So there's a big impact for the full family.
Yes.
And my brother and my little sister, they will not be involved in a family business, but I've decided to come back. And I say, yes, I want to come back, but I want to change a few things. And I want to make my own signature and stamp of this new generation coming, because I think each generation needs to bring a stone to the building. And I couldn't afford to get any more vineyards because price now is just getting crazy. And it's true that coming from my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, they had opportunity to buy some vineyards that I couldn't make it now due to the price, obviously.
Yes.
So you see, nothing was planned. It was just a family meeting. And it took me, 1 year to be sure about my own decision.
So growing up in Champagne, in wine, was there ever a time when you thought that you wouldn't follow a career in wine?
Absolutely.
What were some of the things you thought you might do?
Because I've been always traveling quite a lot. And it was maybe if I didn't have this chance to come back in Champagne for the family business, I would have lived aboard my own country, to be honest. Because I've been always very interested about traveling, meeting lots of different people. But doing some commercial studies means you can do quite different things.
Sure.
It was a really open kind of studies.
So did you go to a business school?
No,
A university?
university in Reims, in
Okay.
France.
So you just studied in your home region?
Yes. And I've decided to work in London for a few years and in United States as well. So I've been working in London in the catering services because when you are like young and really you want to have an easy life and to really enjoying your life.
It's a good way to meet people as well.
Yes. And afterwards, I've decided to work in Paris for a family who used to organize some wine event, but really top range level wine event. And it's true on my CV, when you are coming from grower, it does help. I remember that my boss was quite interested about my profile because it was completely different way to think about selling wine.
Yes.
When you're coming from a grower family.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll just take this opportunity. Jacquart is a name that is pretty well known in Champagne, but there's
Cooperative.
Yes.
The big cup.
Okay.
Yeah. So absolutely no connection, no link at all.
Nothing.
Let me
Just
tell
the
you a
same
story.
name.
Yes.
Okay.
André Jacquart, which is the name of my grandfather, have been creating his own brand, and he took his name, which does make sense.
Yes.
And after he decided to make his own brand, few years afterwards, the big brand Jacquart used to be located in a street called Jacquart. That's the only reason they took this name. So there's absolutely no family link or...
It's interesting that a cooperative would be named after the name of the street.
Yeah, because Jacquart was quite, nice name.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell him around the world, Jacquart, sounds good.
and the street was not named after someone in your family?
No. It was
no relation whatsoever.
Absolutely no relation.
Oh, how strange.
And they became a big cooperative, as you know now. And it's true that the mentality from my grandfather protecting the notion of protecting brand and name was not at all in his perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he didn't protect the name André Jacquart. So, we are completely different people, company, the way that we work,
Mm-hmm.
the way we sell. So that's not a big problem.
Whilst you were living and working overseas and traveling, was it a good opportunity for you to gain some experience in the market?
Yes.
And to think about how champagne, and particularly grower champagne, can work in the markets?
Oh yes, for sure. That's why when I've decided to come back, I was, if I can say, a little bit more open-minded girl.
Okay.
Compared to my friends who used to stay with their parents in the property, following what their parents used to do, like, okay, no change. It's working like this. You stay like this. You will work like this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I've decided to come back and I've bring my experience coming from abroad, it was, I was definitely more open-minded and offering some different things to think about to my parents and grandparents. So that's why I've decided to make big changes in terms of philosophy, approach of wine, completely different that my parents and grandparents used to do.
Okay. So from their vineyards, how much wine were they making themselves before you took over?
They took to use around 80% of our production and to sell the grapes to negotiating people as well,
Okay.
which is quite usual in Champagne, to work in those both sides, to make your own champagne and to sell it
As a grower or as a grower producer?
as a grower producer.
Okay.
Yes.
So as a grower, what's the average amount of hectares to own? As a private grower, not owned by
The
company.
average, it's around 5 to 6 hectares.
Okay.
That's the average in Champagne.
And grower producer, do you know?
Roughly the same.
The same?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Sincerest apologies for interrupting another fascinating Vincast chat, but I wanted to mention the supporter of this episode of the podcast. So I'm speaking exclusively to the female listeners of the podcast who might happen to be at a wine event, a dinner or something like that in the city and looking at a way to get home. Why not consider the new Australian Sheba app, which has been set up by women for women? Sheba is a safe and convenient form of transportation for female-only passengers, which makes you feel more comfortable because not only are all the drivers females themselves, but they also take home 85% of the revenue. So I highly recommend checking out the app and finding out if Sheba is available in your area. Get started with Sheba today. Visit the App Store or the Google Play Store to download the Sheba app and get riding in minutes. When you ride with Sheba, you're getting where you need to go and connecting with a ride-sharing community full of exceptional Australian women. Download the app today. So what was when you said that you had some different ideas and can you talk a little bit about how you wanted to finesse and redirect
Yeah.
the André Jacquart brand and
Yeah.
story for yourself?
Which was really important for me. I think I was convinced since the beginning that the way of selling champagne, the way of approaching vinification, the way of the consumers are drinking champagne have changed a lot compared to my parents and grandparents. They were quite similar. Parents and grandparents used to work in the same direction, but for me, coming in a family means more working on a niche top level range of champagne. And I can't complain what my parents and grandparents have done before, but I have a little frustration that I have gold in my hand and I can go further up in terms of quality champagne. My parents and grandparents used to work on a traditional, classic, standard style of champagne. For me, it was really obvious that we can go further down and on really working on niche product, which sounds really marketing things, but it does.
I will say, please excuse me for saying this, but I think that is a little bit more to do with the market. There is now, champagne has always been very strong, but as far as quality
Yeah.
for champagne, the wines that were put on this pedestal with the Grand Marque, the Dom Perignon, the Krug, this kind of thing. And like these are still Maison, these are still relatively large. The niche you talk about, I don't think it really existed until maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And particularly, well, maybe outside of France, that certainly might be the case. So I think that it may have been difficult, even if they had this vision and this idea of creating, quality.
Yeah.
Grower champagne, the market might not have been there.
It's
so they
true.
would have seen a lot of difficulty to sell and market this wine.
Completely agree with you. It's true. So that's why I took this responsibility coming from my new generation to more focus on, yes.
The opportunity was perfect for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I made all these big changes for only one reason. I had the quality of grapes to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, forget. It
Sure.
doesn't work. So I've made 3 big changes. The first one, I've decided to work on a really long aging, 5 years aging for the non-vintage and 7 and even more for our vintage bottle.
Yes.
Second decision I took is to work on really low dosage, more extra brut range than the traditional dosage of brut 7 and 8 grams of sugar per liter. And the last decision I took, which was actually the biggest one in terms of impact on a wine, is to work in oak barrels, so wood, which was not to be done by my parents and grandparents before.
Mm-hmm.
They used to do the traditional steel vats, vinificate. So it's true, working with oak barrels, wood in champagne. It used to be done a long time ago, before that the steel vats does exist.
And there are still some producers who,
Yes.
that's part of an important, like Boulanger and
Of
Krug's,
course.
really important
I've
part
been a
of their
little bit
style.
I've been a little bit inspired by those big brands, I
Okay,
have to say.
that was my question. That was my
Absolutely.
next question was,
Absolutely.
as far as the way of making the wine, which of the producers, whether grower, champagne producers, or the large houses, were you inspired by?
I've been inspired by Bollinger, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
Krug, especially the Clos du Mesnil, because it's really they are neighbors.
Of course.
And I've been inspired by you probably know this brand in Rie-à-la-Montagne, Chenilleros, sorry, Villemar.
Yes.
I've loved this kind of style of champagne. So they are more on the Pinot Noir and red grapes.
Sure.
But I was convinced that it can suit me with my pure Chardonnay, Blanc de Blanc style champagne.
Okay. As far as the work in the vineyard, before you started, what was the philosophy for the work in the vineyard?
Yeah, it was nothing really special.
Okay.
It's true. I have to be really honest. We are more now working on culture raisonnée. But my parents and grandparents, it was completely vision because they have to produce. So they've been asking the vineyards to be quite efficient.
Sure.
So it was completely in a different vision. But I'm glad that now we have got more strict rules about working on the vineyards, and the treatment it's completely another approach that we are making compared to my parents and grandparents.
Do you think
And that's good.
Do you think that this is a really important
Oh,
part
yes.
of, in terms of producing quality wine, you must have quality grapes first?
Absolutely.
So you had these amazing vineyards.
Yes.
And you had the potential to produce very high quality fruit. So you had to change a little bit in terms of the vineyards?
Yes, I did. Being the fifth generation, it means for me I'm working with quite old vineyards average of age.
Sure.
So it means that forget about quantity. I mean, forget. It's not the big quantity that you are expecting. But the quality is definitely in the vineyards.
Yeah.
So that's why my approach. So I keep on replanting now since few years. But it's true that my parents and grandparents didn't have this philosophy about replanting that much.
Okay. So as far as the harvesting and bring the grapes into the winery, it's a very gentle press, and then
Yes.
how much is vinified in barrel?
It depends on the harvest because every harvest is different.
Of course.
But it's between 6 and 8 months in oak barrels, which is really important. Our oak barrels are not new. They're coming from Burgundy producer. So I'm traveling every year with my dad to buy as a second-hand oak barrels coming from Burgundy Chardonnay wine producer to keep on going and because I've brought 200 different oak barrels. Because in 24 hectares, guess how many parcels I have?
100?
By 2.
200.
Almost.
Okay.
So,
And you keep everything separate.
Absolutely. That's really important for me to keep the origin, the traceability of the grapes through my vinification, and to give different identity on each bottle of my range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you are going to Burgundy to source barrels, are there particular brands, particular coopers that you like to work with?
Absolutely. I'm working with 4 different coopers because I like this kind of variety of oak. It will be a different taste for different grapes, even if they are all Chardonnay and coming from Mesnil of Vertu. Believe me, the allocation, the age of the vineyards offer you completely different quality. That's really important for me to keep that. And working with 4 different coopers, it's a good balance for me. And yes, so we don't have any contract, of course, not with a Burgundy wine producer, but we do work almost every year with the same one.
Okay.
Yes, to keep this direction.
a quality Burgundy producer is going to be buying quality
Yes,
barrels,
absolutely.
and so it's important to have this relationship, and they know that they are selling
Yeah.
the second use barrels to a quality champagne producer.
So it's a good deal.
What's the average age of the barrels that you use?
Be from 2 to even 5 or 6 wines, and I want to keep them even for 10 or 12 years used. It's not a big problem for me because our wine reserved are stored in oak barrels as well.
Mm-hmm.
And every year it's a new harvest, a new challenge, a new approach of wine, and I want to have this flexibility choice to choose the best oak barrels to fit with my grapes.
Okay. So the decision as far as the style of champagne that you want to produce, can you tell me why it was you wanted to make this more, let's say, complex
Yes. Oh, yes.
champagne, a more food-friendly
Yeah.
champagne? Why did you, apart from the fact that you really enjoy this champagne
Yeah.
yourself, as from a sales, from a marketing perspective, why did you choose to work in this way?
My target was to work on gastronomic champagne. So champagne goes with food because for me, champagne it's wine with bubbles.
Yes.
So it was important for me to find this real structure of Chardonnay wine. So my first goal was gastronomic champagne coming from almost a single area. So to be really close from the nature can offer us in terms of elegance, freshness, long aging. And thanks to the oak, I can bring some fruitness, richness, it's full body wine, complexity. And it's true that I have to say that I haven't done a champagne that can everybody can like it, but it's for sure it's a champagne with lots of personality and lots of distinctive champagne, if I can say.
Do you think that an important part of the I guess the richness, the structure of the wine, because you are working with barrels, that means that with a lower dosage, you know that you don't have to worry too much about softness, because I find that
Absolutely.
in a lot of cases the reason you have dosage is to soften the
Yeah,
wine a little bit, because the wine maybe is going to be too sharp, so
yeah,
you don't have to worry about sharpness because of the way you're working with barrels.
absolutely. Absolutely. And coming from the quality of our vineyards grapes as well, and according to the average of our vineyards as well, because forget about quantity, but the concentration inside the berries are amazing. And if you can combine with low dosage, no malolactic fermentation, and oak barrels fermentation, for me it's quite a good. It's a good. It's working quite well together.
Did you make some experimentations to come up with this approach, this style, or did you had you already formed in your mind an idea, if we do 1, 2, 3, 4 different things, then the style of wine we will have will be in this area that I want
Yes,
it to be.
yes.
Okay, you had
Second,
this in your mind.
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, you must have drunk a lot of champagne to have
Yes, I
developed this
did.
approach.
And of course, my dad really support me, and he told me, Marie, I think you're right, and you are the future. You represent the image of the André Jacquart, and you have to get this real personality. And if you are doing a blind testing, you recognize the André Jacquart touch
Hmm.
signature, if I
Hmm.
can say, which was really important for me.
When did you first release your first commercial wine for André Jacquard?
So my first harvest was 2004. So
Yes.
I've done 4, 5, 6, 7, building a new range, building a new vinification with no sales, because the deal was to wait at least 4 to 5 years. So I've launched in the market the new range in 2008.
Wow.
So it'll be 10 years next year.
Okay.
That's the anniversary.
And was it difficult? Was it challenging for you
It is. It was.
to relaunch this almost new brand and
It
story.
was. I knew that we've been through quite hard choice to make, and in terms of sales, completely different clientele,
Yes.
which has happened. So I've lost all the export market coming from my mum, and I've lost lots of private French customer
Okay.
or even professional French customer. I knew that. I was ready for that. I was prepared. So it took me few months, few years, of course, but I'm really happy about the big changes I've done because I'm now producing 100,000 bottles per year, and I do export 8%.
Wow. Okay.
8%, 20 different countries.
And I guess it's perfect for you because you from early on you had this love of travel
Absolutely.
and learning and meeting new people.
Yeah,
So it's a great opportunity for you, I guess.
absolutely. And I'm always quite surprised by the connection I've done when I was a teenager or definitely younger. It's still useful for me nowadays. So that's great. And I'm really happy.
Something that I have kind of felt for a long time in visiting Champagne a few times is I can't think of another region in the world where there have been so many important women
Yes,
with the wine, with wine history.
true.
And I think about certain people like Lily Boulanger
Of
and
course.
Madame Clicquot.
Of course.
These were people who effectively saved champagne at different times,
Yeah.
particularly during very complicated periods of time. And I think it's important as a part of champagne, as a part of the story and the brand image that women are so important and possibly
Yeah.
even more important than the men for champagne.
Yeah. It's true that we say that the woman approach is a little bit different. We've got different feeling, different way of thinking,
And more
and
and more vision, perhaps.
perhaps people with lots of personality.
And so, what have been some of your favorite markets to be selling and talking about your champagne in around the world?
um, the choice of my importer obviously are really important because I'm not traveling every day talking with them. So it's true that I'm working in direct with all my importers. So I can really create a real friendly relationship. We are selling a grower champagne, so to have a face behind the bottle, that's really important. And we have a story to tell to people. So in terms of volume, it's true that big countries like the United States and China are big, big sales for us. But I'm working really well as well with all the Scandinavian countries,
Yes.
Sweden, Norway, Finland, Denmark, really good countries for pure Chardonnay style champagne as well. And I'm working with Australia with now almost 8 years. And we've been growing quite a lot our sales as well. So I'm really happy. And we are selling to so Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, Belgium, Italy, Czech Republic. So it's like, yeah, it's quite different, completely different approach for each country.
Do you enjoy having to think differently for the different markets?
Yes, I do.
It must be a great opportunity. You probably learn more about your champagne
Oh, yes,
traveling and meeting customers and importers than you
absolutely.
would just staying at home in
Oh, yes.
Champagne.
And when you come back, you've got like, you are thinking about what people you've met, all the comments they told you, and there's no routine in our job. You are always learning from your wine, from the customer, when you are traveling, from different culture, different approach. And that's, yeah, make me really lots of, it's an amazing job. And I loved what I'm doing.
And placing your champagne in a very premium, niche quality part of the market would mean that your champagnes are on some of the finest restaurants in the world, and I feel that like there is a lot more interest now in grower champagne, possibly because I think many sommeliers are a little bit tired of seeing the very large houses and they want to have something different.
Yeah.
Is there a community around grower champagne? Are you sort of, do you support each other and sort of say, yes, this is a really important, this is the other face of champagne that we want to promote?
Since now it didn't really happen, but you probably heard about it used to be the Champagne Week, the Printemps des Champagnes in April.
Yes.
And there's lots of group of champagne have been formed since almost now 5 years. And I'm part of a new group called Passion Chardonnay, which is, in the title, you can understand straight away what's going on.
Yes.
So there's more and more. It's true that it used to be more individual things before, but now we are more getting on groups, and there's a big, strong new generation coming now since almost 10 years, and you can see that through the champagne market. That's more and more grower champagne. They've built a strong reputation.
Because I guess the main difference between grower champagne and a large maison is, of course, the grower champagne is much smaller, so they can be so different from each other.
Absolutely.
Because they, it's not just a question of they're in all of Côte de Blanc or Montagne de
No,
Vins.
not at all.
They are in specific parts
Yes.
of those areas in Champagne, and then when you look at subtle differences in the way that they are working, some
Absolutely.
maybe age their wines for longer or shorter, some use barrels, some don't.
You're right.
Some,
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to talk about grower champagne, but
Yeah.
also that you're all making different wines and you have different story.
Absolutely. And I have to say that customers are now more ready to discover this kind of new champagne producer. And it's true that the sommelier are doing an amazing job at educating, teaching, definitely more offering something different coming from the big brands. But consumers are ready to listen, and they are ready to drink something different, which is, of course, really important. It not used to be always done like this.
Yeah.
So question of education, and to travel around the world and talking about our vineyards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Marie, it's been fascinating and fantastic to hear more about yourself and
Thank
about
you.
André Jacquart. I really do appreciate your time. If you'd like to people to, if they want to find out more information, what's the best place for them to go to learn more about the André Jacquart story?
Maybe on our website, if I
Yes.
can say.
Sure.
To be honest with you, is under construction
Okay.
now because I'm doing lots of new things. But it's andrejacquart.com, which is really easy to remember. And of course, if everybody is traveling and going through Champagne, they are more than welcome to come at home.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure there will be many people who will be knocking on your door saying,
I'm ready.
I'm from Australia.
No worries.
I'm here to learn more. But thank you very much for your
Thank you,
time.
James.
And I wish you the most success here in Melbourne.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this episode of the Vincast. I have been James Garesbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino, and you can follow me on social media on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm at Intrepid Wino, and the podcast can be found on Twitter at the Vincast. Head to YouTube, the Intrepid Wino channel. You can check out lots of different videos, including my series of Let's Taste videos. Subscribe, leave a comment, get in contact with me. I'd love to hear from you. You can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Player FM, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeartRadio. I think it's going to be available on Spotify soon. Subscribing means you get the episode as soon as it becomes available, and you can download all 125 previous episodes of the podcast. And I'd love to hear from you via a rating and review, which is a great way to also let other people know what you think of the podcast and give some feedback to potential guests as well. Thank you, as always, to the guys from Earbuds. It's great to be part of a Melbourne podcast network. Please do follow both Earbuds and myself on social media so you can find out all the details about the upcoming Vincast Live on 5th of December at Noisy Ritual in Brunswick East here in Melbourne. Of course, thank you to the sponsor for this episode, Sheba. That's Shebah. Check them out on wherever you download apps. But guys, I've got lots more episodes to come, and I hope to have you on future episodes. But until then, bye.
Earbuds, Melbourne's podcast network. earbudsnetwork.com